we're going to see now Be'ez Hashem Yisborach Maseches Peah Daf Chof Daled. So I want to start again the Mishnah here, Halacha Hey. We'll try to finish Chof Daled. This is the last daf of Maseches of a Perik base. So the shekatzaruha goyim, shekatzaruha listem, kirsamuha namolim. The ants ate it up. Shibrati haruach ubehema patura. It's potter from Peah. Why? Because only the Mishnah teaches us here that the whole chiyuv of Peah is only by a field that has a ktsira through a person, through the owner of the sodar. Kotzer chetzia, ktzeru listem chetzia, v'kotzru listem chetzia, ptura. Shechoyvas hakotzer bekama. Because where was it meant to give in the Peah? In the standing, and that the last half was done through the listem. So there, Ktira is not, and L'chayr means they finished everything. The Mishnah here is not 100% clear, but that's what we need to say, because if they left over something, so why shouldn't he give Peah from that on what he cut? So it's, I think the main point of this Mishnah is, cut to litzim chetzia means that they cut off the part that was meant to give Peah. That's the main point of the Mishnah here. Okay, let's go to the next part. Katzru listem chetzia. V'kotzar chetzia. So here's the other way around. The first half the listem did, and he did the second half. Noisem Peah memashe kotzar. Mishnah says he must give Peah from that part. So let's say there's altogether 120 saw, and the listem cut 60 saw, and he is going to cut the other 60 saw. He only gives one saw for the last 60 that he did. The ones that the listem did is not part of what he needs to give Peah from. And it doesn't mean, you have to remember, it doesn't mean that they took away the grain. That's not the point here, if they took it away or not. The point is that part of the ktsira, the thing that was cut through the listem, is not considered a ktsira. Similar, if the ants cut half of it, and then, or the wind, and then he does not give on that because that's not a ktsira. He only gives Peah on something that had a ktsira. What happens if after cutting half of the field he sells it to somebody else? And obviously he takes the part that he cut, so he cut 60 pounds, 60 saw, and he sells it for somebody else. The one that buys it must give Peah. Oh, so here there was a ktsira. He made a ktsira, and it was his field. He did everything. But what ended up happening, he sold it for a different yid, and that yid finished it, and he has now only 60 pounds, but he must give 2 pounds. Similar case, kotzer chetzia b'higdash chetzia. After cutting half and taking it home, he said, you know what, the second half I'm giving away for Hagdish. Then a guy came, he said, you know, I want to redeem it. He must give even on the first half. It's very similar, and it's even hard to understand what is it so important to mention the word Hagdish here. Hagdish is not the point here, because he redeemed it right away. Hagdish didn't do anything to this. So it's a schwer Mishnah. We need the beer for this Mishnah. But l'chayr, the main point is here, just exactly like the Reisha, that if he ended up finishing the Ketzira, he has to give 2 sa'ah for the one that he finished, and from the first sa'ah, also from the first cutting. Okay, now we'll go back to the first part. This is the simple din. If the goyim are just workers, for sure that field is chayiv. The Mishnah says, the first part of the Mishnah, Ketzirua goyim. What does it mean, Ketzirua goyim? It means that they did it without permission. If they did it with permission, for sure it's chayiv. So we see that clearly that a goy that cuts is also chayiv, because if he is a worker for a yid. Now, by the way, so we just have to mention the same thing that by listim, by goyim, is the same thing. If a goy cut half of it and then the second half was finished by a yid, so he gives peah on the part that he finished. Because we see in this Mishnah here, it says, Ketzirua listim chatzia, v'kotzer chatzia noisen, peah mamashe kotzar. So we see that whatever the goy or the listim cut is considered like a wind blew it, and it's not ketzira, and you don't have to give pay on that part. Now we go by a listim yisrael. One of the cases is a listim that cut half. As misnitim ketzirua la'abda, al ketzirua shaloi la'abda chayeves. So if a listim yisrael did it, a robber that's a yid, and they did not plan to destroy it. In other words, they were planning to take it home. They didn't want to just ruin it. So then we consider it like a ktsira that's what I understand this Yerushalmi, like a ktsira that's done for a yid, because they're yidden, and they're not planning they're planning to steal it. So the Gemara says no. Even if they did a shaloil ab, that's also ptura. Why? What's the logic of this? Ma'achar she'peah nitnes mechuber lekarka ve'in karka nigzelas. Since peah he must give when it's mechuber lekarka, ve'in karka nigzelas. So the Yerushalmi here is a little ambiguous here, but I would understand that meaning means that it is not, if it be nigzelas, it would be a ksira of a bailam, a Yisrael. But here, it's not considered a proper ksira. So I can't pinpoint the peah nitenes mechuber lekarka. It's not. I don't know 100% pshat in this, but I guess the point has to be that a ktsira of a Yisrael, if he has a mind to steal it, obviously, if he does it because he wants to give it for the yid, that's very like he had before, pe'alim, like the workers. But he was planning to steal, so that ktsira is not a ktsira that's considered a ktsira hamachayeves. If it would be nigzelas, we'd say, okay, it's a legitimate ksira because he stole it and it is koina, and okay, and later he has to return it, but it's a legitimate ksira. But since ein karka nigzelas, it's an illegitimate ksira, and such a ksira, there's no chiyuv to give payah. So the listim Yisrael is exactly like a goy. Whatever he cuts here, let's say he cut 75%. On that 75%, you don't give payah. Okay, now comes inyan chadash. Mepnei shehu mafresh min hakoma lakoma, min hakoma lakotzer. Since a person can be mafresh from standing payah upon standing, min hakoma lakotzer, that's regular case. You're taking standing grain and you mafresh payah on the cut. Ve'ein mafresh min hakotzer lo lakotzer lo lakoma. But whenever cut grain, you don't separate cut upon cut. I mean, it's not normal. In a case where you finish the whole field, then there's a din that it's chazra chiyuv afrashas pe'el oimrim. But as long as you still have standing grain, you should not separate min hakotzer al hakotzer, and kal v'chomer, you cannot separate an afish min hakotzer lo al hakotzer la kama. However, pa'amim shu mafish min hakotzer al hakama. There is a certain case that there could be such a thing that a person should separate from peah from a cut grain upon standing grain. Hey Chavid, how is that? Kila sedeu v'shia b'kadei peah. He finished everything cutting, and he left over exactly 1/60th. So he has 59 saw cut, and 1 saw is standing. Now from that last saw, he cut off 1 stalk. Chazra peah. So what happened now? The halach is, if you cut off the piece that was standing for peah, then it's a new chiyuv peah that he didn't say it harezu peah, obviously. If he was magdish l'shem peah, then that's peah. But now you have exactly this sa'ah that's meant to be peah, and he ruined it. So now there is a new chiyuv that's chal. It's called a chiyuv afrashas peah min ha'omrim. We had this in the beginning already, in the beginning of the Masechta. So there is a new chiyuv that says now you have to separate peah from the bundles. Nimtzas mafish min hakotzer al hakama. Then you have to separate from the kotzer upon the standing grain. So now, since the chiyuv now is chal on the bundles, so forget about this. Whatever is standing here, this 0.9 saw is already ruined, because when you started cutting this, you created a chiyuv to be mafish peah min ha'omrim, because you ruined this standing grain. So now you could take, there's no reason to why not? You can take from the kotzer, from the old stuff that you cut, and say that should be peah 1 saw of the kotzer upon the whole field, including this 0.9 comma that's still standing. Even he didn't finish the last exact saw. He says, I'm planning to give this peah, but he didn't say it harezu peah. It's interesting concept. He's planning. So but then he didn't follow through, so to speak. Instead of actually saying harezu peah, he cut it. Because I don't think if he says harezu peah, then it can be a new peah. I don't think that can happen. So if that happened, that he was planning to give that for peah, and then he started cutting chazra peah lo'imrim, then the chiyuv of peah bounces back upon the bundles. Mafish min hakotzer al hakama. Same story, just making this a little bit more bigger chiddush. So it doesn't talk about it exactly. So whatever he did, he planning to leave over. He started cutting. Now the chiyuv goes back on the Omer, and now it can be separated from the kotzer al hakama. Now we're asking a question. You see this Yerushalmi here in the end of the Perek Beis is very, very lumdish. It's not people are not used to Yerushalmi being so lumdish, but here we can see it, how lumdish it goes. He's asking a question. Kotzer chetzia, imacher chetzia. Mishnah says, Kotzer chetzia, imacher chetzia. So what is the din? The lekeach. Let's say Reuven. Reuven is the meicher. Reuven is the one that owned the field, and he sold it for Shimon. And now the question is, what does it mean? We're talking here that he sold. Reuven owned the field, and after cutting half, and he took it home, that 50 pounds, and now he's selling the second half that's for Shimon. Now, Shimon, we said in the Mishnah, has to leave over for everybody, for everything. Question is, Hamoichem mayu sheyiske bepeya shehi materes es ha'omrim. If he's allowed to take the peya that's matter his omrim. So the amount it's talking here, he wants to take the part that's matter his thing that he caught. He caught 50, and now they say that the keich has to leave over for his part also. So the keich needs to leave over. I'll use 60 and 60. So the keich needs to leave over 2 sa'ah. So the question is, if the moicher is allowed to take both sa'ah, maybe he's only allowed to take the sa'ah that the keich was mafresh for the second half. Who says he can take the sa'ah that was meant to pater his half? We can learn it from this. Omer Rabbi Yehuda, ein b'sai b'zman shekibla mimenu lemechza l'shlish v'lerviyah. So the Mishnah later says a story that a worker in a field is not allowed to take peah. However, it says in a certain case he is allowed to. Which case? He told the worker, after you finish cutting everything, then you can take a third. That was the deal. He told him there's 100 sa'ah. So he tells him, you can take a third. You can take 33 sa'ah you can take. In such a case, we say that the worker is allowed to take the peah that's left over. Why? Because he did not own the field. He does not, when he cut it, it was totally not his. He didn't own anything here. The halacha is a balabayas cannot take peah. So he is not a balabayas. He's a worker. He got a gift for his job. He got paid with cut grain. So for that, he's still not considered the owner. So he's allowed to take peah. So from this, the Gemara wants to say, Omer Abun Bachia, Ador Omer Shamoicha Zacha Bepeya Shi Materes Ha'omrim. So the same thing here. The owner, he sold his field. So we say that he doesn't own anything in this land anymore. When it comes to chiyuv when it comes to the last point of giving peah, he's totally gone. He took whatever he took, right? He took some cut grain. That was the deal. So he took whatever he took, and at the point when he gives Afrash's peah, he is not an owner. He was originally okay, but right now he doesn't own anything here. And just like we say there, since the worker doesn't own anything in the karka, he just owns after it's cut. So it means he's not owning a part of the land. He's just getting paid. Here also, the seller is just getting paid. He took whatever he took, and he could take he's allowed to take the peah. He could take it. That's what the Gemara says. Little peah shemeshaya b'karka ashnei shlish sheshayach l'balabayis. Since the land, what's the point? A karka shnei shlish. It a peah shemeshaya b'karka shnei shlish sheshayach l'balabayis. I don't know if that's the right words. I put little peah shemeshaya. Because the karka is not his. If he has an ownership, when he says you get a third from the grain, it means he's owning this land. He's owning the part of everything here. It's his. But if he doesn't own, he just gets paid with grain. Or the same case here by the moicher, after he finished cutting, he sold everything. He doesn't own anything. Meshaya kiven shakar k'shaychel balabais. Pesha Meshaya karka shaychel balabais. Okay. Omer said, no, it's not a good. It's not a good. It's not a good thing. You cannot compare it. Tamon leneschayves adei b'shusay. Bram hoche neschayves adei b'shusay. It's a little bit worse in this case. When he started cutting, that he still owned the karka. So in the Chiyuv Peah, so to speak, starts when you start a tzira. That when the Chiyuv is chal. There's the actual Frashas Peah is at the end, but the one that creates the ground of making Peah, in theory you could start making Peah already, then he still owned it. So there is some kind of ownership here involved. It's the Chiyuv Eschal when he still owned it. Let's see which case would be more similar to that case. Ilu kotzar chatzis hadeyu, emocha masha kotzar. He cut half and he sold. Halekeich mutter, but like the chikru peya, yours. He cut half and he sold it. Begomar amoiche likzer, meshaya peya al chelik alef, shemocher, gam chelik beis. Halekeich mutter, but like the chikru peya. Yours. Shab yesh lo viraya, lahater oifen kazeh. So here he sold it in Macha Masha Kotzer. He sold the tolish, the grain. So the tzira that makes the chiyuv was the ownership of Reuven, and he sold the guy whatever he cut. But he finished it. The owner never was totally in his possession. He just told him, you know what, pay me $100, you get some apples here, some grain. So then, and you say that the keich is mutter, that would be a good similar story, because the keich, this second guy never actually owned anything here. He just told him cut grain, and then the seller finishes it, and he leaves over payer for everything. So why not? Then we understand very well that the lekeach is allowed to take. That's exactly the story with the worker. But this case, where the owner started the cutting and then he sold it, and then he wants to take payah from the part of the lekeach is mafresh on his part that he done the first half. No, that could be. It's not good. Now we'll go for the last section here. Kotzar chetzia imachar chetzia. Halikeich ma'usha yiske bepesh meteses Omer shel moicher. How about the lekeach can be zoiche? It's a second story. It's kotzar chetzia imachar chetzia. We're going now. Mishnah. Kotzer chetzia and macher chetzia. Alekeich noisen peah lekoil. So how about he should take peah? He should take himself, since we can say this, since he's saying such a strong svara that the moicher started the ktsira, so it's like he is the owner here. So even later he sold it for the lekeich. Maybe the lekeich is allowed to take that sa'ah that belongs to peah for the first cutting that the moicher did. And that the Gemara says, plukta de Rabbi Yehuda Anasi. So that's a plukta in the first parak between Rabbi and Rabbi Yehuda Anasi. And what is the machlok is there? It says like this. The story goes like that. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Alekeich peirs telusha mechaver b'shnas meiser oni, Ida nasi Omer echad ani vechad asher metzion miyadoi. Rabbi Omer asher metzion miyadoi, ani ein metzion miyadoi. My time Ida nasi kshem adon zoiche b'leiket shikra peah shaloi, kach lizke b'maisa ani shaloi. You cannot be zoiche maisa ani shaloi. My time Rabbi Glick shikra peah ein toivlen, maisa ani toivel. So it's hard to, I must say, it's hard to understand what the shaykh is this or that. But it's just a very general machloikas if you're makel for a ani. So we can say that is the lekeich as a ani, according to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, we're makel, and we say that, according to Rabbi, that the story there is a totally different story. Lekeich peiros telusha mechaveiroi b'shnas meiser ani. We could say maybe because the chiyuv started already, so that's why we don't say the ani is not allowed to take it. Since the chiyuv started while it was in the reshus of the moicher to give meiser, because he could separate meiser, keich peiros telusha mechaveiroi, and it could be, it doesn't say after meruach, but it was already talish, so it's already shaykh to give. So in such a case, we say that it's what the chiyuv was not chal under the hands of the lekeach. And the same here, it's similar to that case. That since the chiyuv was already chal when the person started cutting, so that's why the lekeach as a oni is allowed to take the part that he's mafresh for the moicher's ksira, that one sa'ah that belongs to the first to the first cutting. So you look up in the soft perikama, you understand the connection of these two things. So this is a complicated Yerushalmi, but you look there up in the first perik, you can see how it matches well. Let me finish the perik here, since it's a continuation of before. Pinchas asked the question: Ketziras chutz la'aretz, ma yesh tehei chayeves b'peah. So obviously, chutz la'aretz is not chayev b'peah. So the question must be: if he started cutting the chutz la'aretz and he finished it in Eretz Yisrael, if he has to give from Eretz Yisrael upon the peiros of chutz la'aretz. So the answer is no, he's not mechuyev. Let's say the Gizber's started the cutting, and the person was paid from the hagdish and he finished the cutting, then he does have to give upon the Gizber. Now this doesn't say. It's interesting. It's not doime to a guy that cut. It's not doime to that. It's not doime to that. It's for some reason the Gemara understood that the Gizber's cutting is similar to the moicher that sold, that the keich has to give upon everything. Shegoma b'shus hagdish chayev litten ala koil, chayev hahediet litten ala koil. Now we're going to ask a question that Yerushalmi does not seem to go with a piece of before. Asking like this: Kotzer hagizber, kotzer chetzia, going like this. He's cut half, vehigdish chetzia, vehigdish chetzia. It doesn't say, but this is the story must be like this. A person owned a field, he cut half of it, and half he can take for himself, it's his. Then he decided, you know what, the second half is Hegdish. Now the Gizber started finishing the Ktira, so he cut another quarter. So now there's 3/4 cut. The first half, then another 25%. Then a new guy came, or maybe the owner even. The owner finished the thing. The owner was poide and he finished the whole thing. So what is it then? Mafish min hakotzer ala kotzer. He must separate from the cut upon the cut. So whatever the Gizber cut, he does not need to give Peah. Now this mamash does not match what we just said now, that Hegdish Chayev, that if a person finishes the Ktsira, he has to give on the Hegdish part also. Here we say Mafrish min hakotzer ala kotzer. From the first half, he has to separate from kotzer ala kotzer. Why? Because there was a hefsik. And you know what? Maybe I can interpret it. But Shepada es kula. Maybe it talks that he did not finish the Ktsira. I think that's the story. It doesn't need to give because he didn't finish anything. Right now he has to give from kotzer ala kotzer. And what happens subsequently, we don't talk now. We don't discuss that. Maybe he doesn't want to do any ktsira. Maybe he wants to be magdish again. Right now, I guess that's what the situation is. We're talking at this particular moment when he was poide from a shus hegdish. So we say, hello, what you're meant to do now is to be mafish min hakotzer ala kotzer. From that 50% that you cut upon that 50%, because you cannot be mafish from the new cutting upon that, because that's already a hefsik. Whatever niftik b'shus hegdish, you don't need to be mafish upon that. However, if you finish cutting, then you might be mechayev. That's what it says before. Ma hegdish chayev. But I'm telling you, it's sosum, and whoever finds a good pshat, please tell me. Thank you.